Good morning, everybody. This is Weldon Jones with Sports Media TV Unfiltered. I hope everyone's having a great morning. I hope everyone had a great weekend and such. I haven't been to you guys with a video in a while, but I wanted to kind of wait until we got a little closer to Game 6 of the NBA Finals to talk about the possible outcomes. So, everyone who saw Game 5, I included, saw that Cleveland not tied the series, but brought the series to 3-2 in a rout victory, which is very impressive on Cleveland's part. I think they were a little fortunate that Draymond Green wasn't playing. I think that definitely made it easier, but nevertheless, we can't take away from the spectacular performance that LeBron James and Kyrie Irving put on for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They combined for 82 points, and I think it was the most by a duo in a NBA Finals game in NBA history. So you have to give credit where credit is due. Cleveland needed to force a Game 6 if they wanted to have any chance of winning this series, and they did that. Now, granted, this doesn't mean that the odds have been tipped completely over, because there's only been actually no teams in finals history have ever came back from a 3-1 deficit. That's something to be noted. That's something to be notified of, to be wary of. And only 2 cases, a Game 7 has been forced. So I'm not going to jump the gun and say there might be a Game 7, because we don't know that. If we went by history, then we could definitely just say that last year Golden State closed the deal on their home floor. So, or last year Golden State closed the deal on Cleveland's home floor. I'm sorry, hard to speak. It's very early in the morning, guys. So just give me a pass. But with that being said, this is going to be a really entertaining Game 6. I'm definitely happy to see Draymond Green back on the floor again, so we can actually have, a full-fledged competition here, because we know what Draymond Green means to Golden State, and that definitely played a huge factor last night. Not really just in Golden State's defense, but just their toughness in general. They're a much more feisty team when Draymond is on the floor, and with them, he gives them something that just brings out an extra level of motivation and competition in them that helps them raise their level of play. So that's definitely something that I'm sure they missed in game 5, and it definitely showed. Granted, now Kyrie was just spectacular. He was pretty much unstoppable in Game 5. Just isolation plays and stuff like that, and he was definitely due for a game like that. And he really, if you put it in perspective, he scored. He scored in the upper 20s in Game 2. Game 3, he scored, what was it, close to 30? And then he scored like 34 in Game 4, the rout loss in Cleveland. So I wasn't really too shocked, because he was scoring around that range anyway. So, factor in him hitting a couple of more shots, and he was gonna eclipse 40. Now, LeBron definitely surprised me with the amount of scoring output that he produced in Game 5 to force a Game 6. He had 41 points, which is phenomenal. And it was a different LeBron James. We didn't see this LeBron James through the first 4 games of the series, and it took till Game 5 for us to actually, come across this LeBron James, the one that we were anticipating to see. And on a side note, poor Kevin Love, because LeBron did leave him hanging and yell at him. If you guys haven't seen that video, check it out. I'll leave a link down in the description for that as well, because that was kind of funny. I'm not going to lie. And another side note, Stephen Curry's 2 lows, it's a decent shoe. I don't think it's a bad shoe. It doesn't look like the conventional basketball shoe that you see coming out in the market now, so I can understand why it's getting roasted, but at the same time, when I look at the shoe, I think it's a good shoe. So, leave your, you can roast me in the comments section, or roast me on social media, wherever you see me at. about it, but I think it's a pretty decent shoe. I'd buy it either way, without the straight fire thing written on it though. That's for sure. All right, so let's talk about Game 6. And this is going to be an interesting game for, well, two reasons. One, I just mentioned before, Draymond Green will be back. So that's a good sign for Golden State. And another reason is because obviously Cleveland is not a favorite here. But I think this is the closest that has been in betting odds, I think, this entire series, as far as for a single game. Not the entire series, but for a single game. I'm not going to get into percentages about, percentages of chances of Golden State or Cleveland win the finals, because, I mean, we're at this point, anything could happen. You never know. But history tells us no team has ever came back down from that kind of deficit in the finals. But we never know. So, but when we talk about a closeout game in Cleveland, there's a couple of things to take into account here. The first thing is really that obviously Golden State is going to play a lot better than they did the other night. We've seen this all year long. They are a bounce-back team, especially after a blowout loss or after a stretch of bad games. And in this series, it's kind of been the other trend where it's been like, okay, they take a blowout loss and then they hand out a couple of blowout losses in return, like right behind each other. So when you look at that and how they went into Cleveland and did their job and got the split the series, you can't factor out that they might just close this out on their home floor. And I mean, if I'm a betting man, I would still bet in favor of Golden State on Cleveland's home floor, but I would not put a huge point margin on it, because I do think that Cleveland is going to come out and compete as well. But I think the difference maker here is Draymond Green, like I said, obviously, again. And also, now that we've seen Kyrie, fire off 3 or 4 30-point games in a row, I'd be hard-pressed to see a fourth one. I don't think that'll happen again. Not with Golden State competing at the highest level, playing as if everything is at stake. Cleveland was on another level, intensity-wise when they came in to Golden State, and they definitely showed that. And Golden State was slacking a little bit. They struggled with shooting, but it was beyond that. Their defense was terrible. So you would think they would have given Cleveland a harder time, or tried to give Cleveland a harder time, but this is a playoff series, and there are going to be nights like this where, one team does this and another team does the opposite. And, the other night, that was one of those nights. And, Cleveland's had some nights like that in this series where they didn't play up to their standards, and Golden State came in and ran them out of the building. So, it's been back and forth in its own way. But at the same time, there's a lot of distance between the two teams, somehow. With that being said, after this series, I'd be hard-pressed to think about the future of the LeBron James, Kevin Love, and Kyrie Irving trio. And that's not to say that I'm saying they're going to lose already, but in the event that they do lose, you could expect to see some offseason moves made. And I think that one of the first people to go is probably going to be Kevin Love. And not because he's not good enough. It's not because he can't play. It's not because he's a locker room problem or anything like that. But it's just he doesn't fit there. He doesn't fit in that Cleveland system. Not every player can be plugged into a system and taken out of their role like that and become, a budding piece of a championship roster like that. Not that Kevin Love is a championship player, but if he's going to be a championship player, it's going to be as a first option. And that's obviously the case, as we've seen. Obviously, you have to put talent around any kind of player for them to win anything, so that's that. But with this Cleveland team, you just feel like they need someone else as a third option. Kevin Love is it's just too conflicting, I think, for for Cleveland, really, because you have LeBron James, who needs the ball in his hands. You have Kyrie Irving, who needs the ball in his hands all the time. And then you have Kevin Love, who pretty much needs the ball in his hands. Yeah, he can spot up, he can do the pick and roll a little bit, but let's face it, most of his offense comes from getting the ball in the high post area and the low post area and going to work, or coming out for threes and facing guys up. So I mean, Kevin Love for the most part is an isolation player with really good passing ability. But here's the problem: LeBron James is the same kind of player. So you can't play LeBron James off the ball. You have to put the ball in his hands. He's not the best of shooters. He was very hot the other night, but we'd be hard pressed to see that again too, as history tells us. So, with that being said, in the event that Cleveland does not pull it out this year, I think we could definitely expect to see Kevin Love be the first option to be sent elsewhere for another player to fill in the big three, and maybe even Kyrie Irving. And definitely, Kyrie. You think Kyrie should stay, but if you think about it, at this point, for LeBron James, this is championship or bust. He has to win, or he has to get the heck up out of there, or he has to get personnel changed. Because obviously, the players that are around him are not going to be able to get it done. Of course, that's granted they lose this series, right? So that's essentially what we're alluding to. If LeBron James loses this series, the players around him just simply can't get it done with him. And it's nothing against them, but I'd say he's a hard person to play with. I mean, any superstar is going to be hard to play with, but LeBron especially, because the nature of what makes him great. He's a facilitator, but he's a naturally ball-dominant facilitator. He doesn't really run the offense. It's really just simply LeBron or bust. And that's the way that he likes it. And I think this group of players in Cleveland, they can't revolve around that. Players aren't getting enough touches, and it seems as if it's gotten to a point, where Cleveland comes down to this. What's LeBron and Kyrie going to do? And I don't think there's really a chance for role players in Cleveland like that. At least the ones that are there right now. Richard Jefferson's been doing okay, but he wasn't that spectacular in Game 5. He had like 8 points and 3 rebounds. And he didn't even play that many minutes either. So, just another kind of wave to that argument. But with that being said, let's go ahead and I want to take a second and just go back to the point of this video. We're going to talk about Game 6 and what I think is going to happen. So, Game 6, we should definitely expect another big game from Klay and Steph. I think Steph is going to play way better in Game 6. That's definitely something we can count on. Kyrie and LeBron are going to do what they do. But what it's going to come down to is Draymond Green and Kevin Love. And that's where myself and some Cleveland fans would part ways. Because whilst Kevin Love has the capability to change the game, he doesn't really ever do it. And it may be just because of Tyronn Lue's rotations, the system that he has. Kevin Love just doesn't fit in with that system and that team. And I think that's a glaring insight. Like, really, it's a really glaring insight. And it's almost to a point where you can almost take some focus off Kevin Love and just play against Kyrie and LeBron. And this is where that extra defender comes in. And this is where I think Golden State might have a slight edge. Now, on the other hand, Cleveland can get hot really fast, as can Golden State. But when Cleveland gets hot, it seems as if everything starts to click for them when they start to get hot. So if Cleveland gets hot at any point in the game and they can stick with that momentum, then yeah, we're looking at a game 7. But I think if I was a betting man, I'm going to definitely have to go Golden State, and I'm going to give it like a 6 or 7 point margin. And that's a close 6 or 7 point margin. That means, like, game's tight, it comes down to one play, and we have to resort to free throws to decide the game. I think it's going to be that kind of a game. And not just because Golden State closed it out in Cleveland, but because when you play the factors, my thing with this predicting is that you have to go by what the numbers are showing. And this series, Kyrie has not been impressive from the field. What he's managed to do is shoot enough shots to negate his inefficiency. And in some games, Golden State has let them off the hook with bad defense. That's not an excuse for Golden State. It's just what it is. And also, LeBron James. He's not a three-point shooter. He had a very hot game in Oracle Arena. He saw the rim so many times in the first half that the basket just opened up for him. Will he do that again? I don't know, man. I mean, there was no Draymond. That's the biggest thing. Draymond, it's more than just like a physical thing with Draymond Green. He quarterbacks the defense. And when people are organized and in position, they automatically become better defenders because they're more aware of what's going on the floor, so they're not going to give you the little things that you were seeing them get in Game 5, what it comes down to. And also, we should definitely expect to see Golden State's role players actually hit shots this time. I mean, it was really crazy. Harrison Barnes was terrible from the field in the second half anyways. Clay should have got the ball more in the second half to close this series out. But I don't think it would be right to close this series out without Draymond Green anyways because, he's gotten you this far, with his efforts as well. He's a huge part of Golden State's trio. And for me, even as a spectator, I don't think it would have been right to see Golden State hold up the Larry O'Brien trophy without Draymond being there to witness it. So, I mean, at this point, you still have to say that Golden State is going to win the series because, no teams came back from 3-1 yet in the finals. But there's a chance that Cleveland can do it if they can find a way to deal with the blow that Golden State is going to throw at them on their own home floor. Because last night, Golden State kind of took it on the chin. And what this series has shown thus far is that whenever one team takes it on the chin, they dish it out twice as hard the next game. As we saw with the difference between Game 2 and Game 3, when Cleveland came back and won that game in Cleveland. Golden State handed it to them. And then Cleveland turns around and hands Golden State a huge body blow and a blowout win. So you have to take that into consideration. If everything goes as this series has trended, I think we'll see Golden State win tomorrow. It'll be in 6. I don't think this goes to a Game 7. I just don't see it right now. Now, another thing that should be taken note of is that Andrew Bogut got injured badly the other night, too, as well. I forgot to mention that. Andrew Bogut went down. And they were forced to rely on Anderson Varejao, which might be kind of a problem. But I think it was more of a problem because Draymond wasn't there again. Everything in that Game 5 loss points at the missing presence of Draymond Green. Which makes you wonder, and I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about this because this was really bogus on the NBA's part. It's very peculiar that they decide to turn around and suspend Draymond Green after reviewing a play that wasn't even called for a foul. on the NBA's part, I'm not even talking about the series at this part, even though this does make the NBA look pretty bad, like they're trying to rig a series. It does make it look that way, but I'm not going to say that. I don't really care about the minute details of what the NBA's motives were. But just the actions themselves are kind of alarming. Because, we've, and everyone has talked about this from point A to point B ever since Game 5 ended. Or, ever since Game 4 ended and, they heard the news about Draymond Green. Everyone's talked about ESPN. I'm kind of late to the party, I get it. But my thing with this transparency rule that you need to point out all the mistakes and point out all the mistakes of the officials. My thing is this. The officials royally screwed up by not calling the first, thing a double foul or a foul or whatever. It was really a foul on LeBron James. We know that part. And LeBron James instigated it. He's a smart player, man. He's a very, very smart player. You're not going to sit here and tell somebody that he didn't do that on purpose. Like, you don't look at somebody and step over them. You know what I mean? Like, can we just go ahead and say this? Like, you don't look at somebody for a split second and then just step over them and put your junk in his face. Like, you don't do that without doing it on purpose. I don't know if Tyronn Lue told him to do it or something like that because he felt some kind of way when Iverson did to him. That's a joke. Don't come after me, LeBron. But whatever the case, you don't do that kind of thing on accident with no ill intent. He knew what he was doing. With that being said, I respect the gamesmanship on LeBron's part. I don't respect the fact that he tried to play it off. He tried to play Mr. Nice Guy about it and say that it was he would never disrespect an opponent, because that is a lie. That's definitely a lie. If you look at the play over and over again, and Stephen A. Smith alluded to this as well, this was on purpose. If you look at where the ball is after that whole incident with the screen was, after LeBron threw him down, LeBron could have easily ran around Draymond Green and got back to the ball in time. But no, this man, he stepped over him when he had plenty of room both ways to get back in that play. So, that whole incident, was really LeBron's fault. If anyone should have been suspended, if they're going to hand out suspension, which was not warranted at all, it should have been LeBron James. Because he threw a player on the ground, first of all, on purpose, and then he turns around and he steps over him. So if you're going to hand out penalties, hand it out to where the penalties belong, first of all, because Draymond was not in the wrong here. And the second thing is, as the NBA, how do you, in your right mind, have the gall to go back and review that play? Like, how? I don't get it, because there was no foul called on that part of the play. There was no foul called. And if the refs didn't call it, why are you going in there and trying to impose your will on the outcome? And yes, other people have said this, but seriously, it's a valid point. It's a valid point. You're making yourselves look bad. You're making it look like you really wanted to rig this series to force a Game 6 or a Game 7 because you didn't want, whether it is you didn't want LeBron to go out like this, or whether it is that you didn't want Cleveland to lose in 5 games. Whatever it is, you're making it seem like you got an ulterior motive here. You're making it seem like you have a motive here. And that sounds like a little bit of a problem. A little bit of a problem, if you ask me as a fan, as a player. Because everyone who saw that play, no one is saying LeBron did this unintentionally. Obviously, LeBron baited him into the entire situation. And, if this is about trash talking, then I really don't want to hear it. Because, as Klay Thompson and Steph Curry alluded to, people trash talk on the court all the time. I'm pretty sure LeBron has heard worse than the B word. Like, and Draymond would have been the B word to let LeBron just step over him like that. No, he was obligated to flail at LeBron and stuff like that, because you don't do that. That's underhanded. It's very underhanded. So, with that being said, Game 6 will be coming up tomorrow. I'm not sure when I'm going to do the post game. I might do it immediately after the finals game, my reaction and, the whole analysis of the game. I might do it immediately after. I might do it a day after. It just depends how I'm feeling. But other than that, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.